men and women who serve in our country's uniform. Give it up for our veterans. Thank you. You know, one of those veterans is Juan Castillo. Juan fought in World War II, and he fought in the Korean War. Today, he's 2 months away from his 101st birthday. Juan's legacy is carried on by Puerto Ricans in Iraq and Afghanistan, men and women like Chief Master Sergeant Ramon Colon Lopez of the United States Air Force. In 2004, Ramon's team was going after a high-value target in Afghanistan. His helicopter was seriously damaged by hostile fire. In the thick of battle, he didn't know how large the force that he was up against, but he pressed on anyway, and his team killed or captured 12 enemy fighters. Because of his bravery, he was the first Hispanic American to be awarded the Air Force Combat Action Medal. And I tell this story because for decades, Puerto Ricans like Juan and Ramon have put themselves in harm's way for a simple reason. They want to protect the country that they love. Their willingness to serve, their willingness to sacrifice is as American as apple pie, or as arroz con gandules. The aspirations and the struggles on this island mirror those across America. So I know that today a lot of folks are asking some of the same questions here on the island as they're asking in Indiana or California or in Texas. How do I make sure my kids get the kind of education that they need? How can I put away a little money for retirement? How can I fill up my gas tank? How can I pay the bills? Everywhere I go, I see families facing challenges like these, but they're facing them with resolve and determination. You know, these problems didn't develop overnight here in Puerto Rico or anywhere else, but that means we're not going to solve them overnight, but day by day, step by step, we will solve them. We are going to be able to improve our education system here in Puerto Rico and all across America. We are making strides to improve our healthcare system here in Puerto Rico and all across America. We are going to put people back to work here in Puerto Rico and all across America. Maybe some of you remember that when I was here in 2008, I spoke in front of the Cuartel de Bahia, a site that had been home to so many chapters of Puerto Rican history. Today, Puerto Rican workers are writing the next chapter by turning the building into a model of energy efficiency. They're making HVAC systems more efficient. They're putting on a green roof. They're installing 720 photovoltaic panels. When they're done, it's estimated that the energy savings will be 57%. And Puerto Rico will have taken one more step towards creating a clean energy economy. Those are the kinds of steps it'll take for Puerto Rico to win the future and for America to win the future. That's what we do in this country. With each passing decade, with each new challenge, we reinvent ourselves. We find new ways to solve our problems. We push forward. And we do so in a way that gives every one of our people a shot at the dream that we all share. The dream that if you're willing to work hard and take responsibility, you can build a better life for your family. You can find a job that's secure, provides decent wages, provides for your children, provides for your retirement. That's what people are hoping for, and it's not too much to ask. Puerto Rico, I don't need to tell you that we're not there yet. We're not where we need to be. But in these challenging times, people on this island don't quit. We don't turn back. People in America don't quit. We don't turn back. We place our bets on entrepreneurs and on workers and on our families. We understand that there's strength in our diversity. We renew the American dream. We have done it before. We will do it again. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Puerto Rico.
President Obama from just a couple of hours ago in San Juan, Puerto Rico. The president returns to Washington later tonight. Back live here on the House floor, procedural vote, the motion to recommit vote on the 2012 spending bill for military construction and Veterans Affairs, a bill that would spend $144 billion in the next fiscal year, 2012. That's 2% more than the current level. The bulk of the funding, the money from this bill, goes to the Veterans Affairs Department. That includes just over $60 billion in discretionary funding. Part of the bill, $14 billion, is for military construction. That's 16% less than the current level. So a motion to recommit vote, it's a 15-minute vote, and it's winding down. The final passage vote on military construction will be next, and then they will take up the rule for another spending bill, the 2012 Agriculture Department spending bill, a bill that includes child nutrition programs, food stamps, and the Food and Drug Administration. That'll be the third vote in this three-vote series. Meanwhile, over in the U.S. Senate, they will gavel back in shortly at 2:15 Eastern to resume consideration. Well, actually, they'll hear the speech from Marco Rubio from Florida, his maiden speech, freshman senator from Florida. And the Senate will then take up the more debate on the Economic Development Administration, including an amendment by Tom Coburn, which would end the tax credit on ethanol production. And that'll be a procedural vote coming up. The Hill reports this afternoon that a number of farm state senators are offering an alternative to ending that ethanol subsidy. They write that while Coburn's language would completely eliminate the subsidy, the pro-ethanol proposal would cut off the subsidy on July 1st and replace it with a variable ethanol subsidy that fluctuates with the price of oil. Among the proponents for that approach, Senator Lugar, Republican of Indiana. Also on Capitol Hill today, Vice President Biden resuming his discussions, his bicameral and bipartisan group, his panel looking at debt and deficit reduction, facing an early August deadline of raising the debt ceiling. The Vice President will hold meetings on Capitol Hill today, presumably underway. They were supposed to get underway at 2 o'clock Eastern, and the meeting's also set for Wednesday and Thursday.
On this vote, the yeas are 184 and the nays are 234. The motion is not adopted. The question is on passage of the bill under Clause 10 of Rule 20. The yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
The House moving on to final passage of the fiscal year 2012 spending bill for military construction and Veterans Affairs. A 5-minute vote. One more 5-minute vote will follow this, and that'll be the rule vote for the spending bill, the 2012 bill for agriculture. And that rule would allow for an hour of general debate and a number of amendments to expected to go well into the afternoon with votes much later today.
votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 411 and the nays are 5, and the bill is passed. And without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business is the vote on adoption of House Resolution 300, on which the yeas and nays were ordered, and the clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Calendar Number 45, House Resolution 300, resolution providing for consideration of the bill H.R. 2112, making appropriations for agriculture, rural development, food and drug administration, and related agency programs for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2012, and for other purposes.
The question is on the adoption of the resolution. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
And this will be the last vote in this series after the House passes the 2012 spending bill for military construction and Veterans Affairs. They move on to the vote on the rule for the 2012 spending bill for agriculture. The rule would allow for an hour of general debate and unlimited amendments, and that general debate to start next following this vote. This is the rule vote for the fiscal year 2012 Agriculture Department spending bill. The House is taking up the annual spending bill to fund agriculture and Food and Drug Administration programs for the next fiscal year. Eric Wasson of The Hill joins us. What should we know about the 2012 agriculture spending bill?
Well, this is the third 2012 bill that's coming to the House floor, and by far, it's of the three that have come up, it's the most controversial. It has deep cuts to child nutrition programs, to foreign aid, and to food safety that the White House yesterday blasted in the formal Statement of Administration policy. So this is really getting into the core governmental functions, and we're going to see some heated debate on the floor.
Some House Democrats have described the bill as reckless. What do they mean by that?
Well, I mean, it does have cuts to food safety inspections. It also, you know, they estimate that by trimming the Women, Infants, and Children program by about $600 million, it will put hundreds of thousands of women and children, low-income women and children, without access to the food they need. So that's primarily the target of what they're talking about. There's also been some very controversial policy riders in the bill, one of which was sponsored by Representative Denny Rehberg of Montana, which said that the FDA can only make policy if it squares with, quote, hard science and cost-benefit analysis. Now, it turns out that this was objected to by a lot of representatives on the Republican side as well, and it's going to be open to a point of order on the floor. The Rules Committee did not protect that particular language, so we're probably going to see that stripped out. That'll be an interesting thing to look for.
What about debate over the issue of farm support payments called for in the 2008 farm law?
That's right. Well, deficit hawk Jeff Flake was successful in committee in getting an amendment to the bill, which would actually affect direct farm payments. Under the Farm Bill, the limit is $500,000 or $750,000 in adjusted gross income, above which you cannot receive these direct farm subsidies. But he would lower that threshold to $250,000, so that would cut off more people from receiving direct farm payments. This is very controversial, especially because it sort of wades into the Agriculture Committee's...
The resolution is adopted, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Oregon rise?
Madam Speaker, by direction of the Republican Conference, I send to the desk a privileged resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
Clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 303, resolution electing members to certain standing committees of the House of Representatives. Resolved that the following named members be and are hereby elected to the following standing committees. Committee on Agriculture, Mrs. Noem. Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, Mr. Fleischman. Committee on Ways and Means, Mr. Reed.
Without objection, the resolution is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to be removed as a co-sponsor of H.R. 1380.
Without objection. Before the House of Communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir, I write to inform you that effective immediately I am resigning from the House Rules Committee to join the House Ways and Means Committee. Signed sincerely, Tom Reed, Member of Congress.
Without objection, the resignation is accepted. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to be removed as a co-sponsor from H.R. 1380.
Without objection. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material in H.R. 2112, and that I may include tabular material on the same.
Do I read this? Oh. Without objection.
Pursuant to House Resolution 300 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House and the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the consideration of H.R. 2112. The Chair appoints the gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. Miller, to preside over the Committee of the Whole.
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the consideration of H.R. 2112, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriation for agriculture, rural development, food and drug administration, and related agencies' programs for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2012, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the bill is considered read the first time, and the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Kingston, and the gentleman from California, Mr. Farr, each will control 30 minutes, and the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield to myself 5 minutes and recommend to the House H.R. 2112, the House Agriculture, FDA, and CFTC funding bill for FY 2012, and want to make a few remarks about it. Number one and foremost, because a lot of people are very concerned about the allocation for this bill and the funding level, but I want to remind everybody of a couple of things. Number one, our national debt is now 95% of the GDP. It's $14 trillion. For every dollar we spend, 40 cents is borrowed. Now, both parties have fingerprints all over this. We have all overspent. For example, in 8 years, President Bush added to the national debt.
The gentleman will suspend. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Members are advised to take their conversations off the floor. Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. For example, for 8 years under President Bush, the national debt increased $3.5 trillion. Way too much. And yet, in contrast, in just 3 years, President Obama has added to the national debt $5 trillion, an increase of 56%. And so much of this is due and owed to foreign countries. Can you imagine, and much of it to China, can you imagine what kind of deal China, communist China, a major competitor of ours, would impose upon us if they forced us to restructure our debt? We have to do it ourselves. Now, the House has passed the Ryan budget, which many people oppose, and I understand that. But I want to point out that the President of the United States budget failed in the Senate 97-0. Harry Reid voted against the President's budget. And in the House, the Congressional Black Caucus offered a budget that failed. The Congressional Progressive Caucus offered a budget, and it failed. The Republican Study Committee offered a budget, and it failed. The Democrat caucus offered a budget, and it failed. In the Senate, budget plans were offered by Mr. Toomey of Pennsylvania, Mr. Paul of Kentucky. Both failed. The only budget that has passed either body is the Ryan budget, and that's what we are looking at today. Those numbers. Now, understand that there's a lot of reluctance to make some of these tough decisions. Today in America, 61 million people receive monthly government checks. That's anything from welfare to Medicare to farm payments to veteran retirements to Social Security. Lots of people receiving lots of money. These programs are enormously popular, and they're deeply integrated into our economic system and culture. Therefore, reforming these programs is very, very difficult. And to further complicate things, 47% of American households do not pay income taxes. For them, the status quo is working just fine. So addressing these things is very difficult. And if you look at the spending pattern in the last several years, it's frightening. March 2008, $29 billion to bail out Bear Stearns. May of 2008, $168 billion stimulus package from the Bush administration. In July of 2008, $200 billion to bail out Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And then in November 2008, $700 billion for TARP, or the Wall Street bailout. And in January 2009, $878 billion for the Obama stimulus program, which, by the way, Madam Chair, was to keep us from getting to 8% unemployment. Now we're hovering between 9 and 10%, and I don't need to remind you, but this is the one-year anniversary of the summer of recovery. There has not been any recovery. We're still looking for those jobs. Spending our way into prosperity does not work. If it did work, we would be having prosperous times right now. So the Ryan budget for this bill is $17.25 billion, or a reduction of $2.7 billion, approximately a 13.5% decrease in spending. And yet, despite this, because of the mandatory spending portion of this bill, the bill actually has a net increase, mostly driven by food stamps and the school lunch program, which have gone up about $6 billion between the two of them, about $7 billion between the two of them. We still have a net increase in this bill. Now, there's going to be a lot of discussion on lots of different accounts, and one of them is the WIC account, the Women, Infant, and Children account, something that I'm very concerned about, something that all of our committee has always supported on a bipartisan basis. But last year, there was some money taken out of it. $562 million to settle a lawsuit which had nothing to do with school nutrition. A lot of the critics are going to be saying WIC has never been cut. Last year, the Obama administration cut WIC $562 million. Now, Madam Speaker, Chair, I yield myself 2 more minutes.
Gentleman's time's expired.
I yield myself 2 more minutes.
Additional 2 minutes.
USDA numbers show that WIC participation has dropped 300,000 from February 2010 to February 2011. Yet we are still funding it at 8.7 million people. We do not intend for anybody to fall through the cracks. If there is a shortage, there are 3 discretionary accounts that we can draw upon: a contingency fund of $125 million, a carryover fund which is in excess of $350 million, and the Secretary's Interchange Authority, which is $210 million. There's a lot of things in WIC we can do to improve, to make sure that children don't fall through the cracks. Right now, for example, 49% of the kids in America participate in WIC. Do we really believe 49% are impoverished? Perhaps it's oversubscribed. Maybe we can work with the WIC folks on that. We've had a very healthy debate about WIC overhead, and the USDA has given us conflicting numbers on that. We're planning to meet with the USDA and find out what the real story is. I understand there may be an amendment to say, let's all agree on what an overhead limit should be for WIC and then not spend money on overhead over that. We are concerned about these things, but I want to close with this. Today in America, a child under 5 years old is eligible for 12 federal programs. After that age, he or she is eligible for 9 federal feeding programs. At 65, you're eligible for 5 different federal feeding programs. We want to make sure no one falls through the crack and no one goes hungry, yet at the same time, is it possible that some folks are eligible for not just 3 meals a day, but maybe 4 and 5? And can we enter into that discussion without a lot of finger-pointing and a lot of emotion? Can we also talk about the fraud and the misuse and the administrative costs without a lot of screaming and hollering? I think we can. I look forward to that debate, and I reserve the balance of my time, and I recommend passage of this bill.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from California.
I yield as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today as a ranking member on the Agriculture Appropriations Subcommittee to draw the concern to this bill. I know that we're in tough budget times, but even in tough budget times, people have to eat. It's my opinion that this bill makes it very hard for people to eat, particularly people who don't have any money. The allocation for FY 2012 Agriculture Appropriations Bill, as approved in the full committee, is $17.250 billion. This is $5 billion, or 23% below what President Obama asked for. It's 14% below what Congress enacted last year. It's 26% below what the Congress enacted the year before. It's even below what we enacted in 2008. So it is really, it is taking the wind out of the hopes and food lockers of people who are most poor. With the allocation that Chairman Kingston was given, I don't envy his position. He was placed to make these drastic cuts. Will affect every heart of farm country, and I do appreciate the effort that he's made to invest our very limited resources wisely and cost effectively. In tough budget times, everyone has to tighten their belts. We all know that. I want to point out, though, that it doesn't matter if you're a specialty crop producer in California or a cotton or peanut producer in Georgia. If the resources are not available to deliver the programs, then the effects felt by both producers and consumers in urban and rural areas are the same. I know my friend, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kingston, did the best he could, but agriculture is about feeding people. This isn't just about looking at the cost of everything. It's also examining the value. It's about making sure that that America has the production capabilities and enough food to go around domestically and internationally. The bill almost makes that difficult, if not impossible, especially where nursing mothers and infant babies are concerned, because the WIC program gets whacked. The bill also calls into question the United States' commitment to our international neighbors who have hungry and malnourished people that depend on our assistance to starve off mass starvation because the Food for Peace program is chopped. I think there comes a point in budget exercise when you starve the program so much that it just can't function. I fear that this is where this bill is going, with several of the funding levels in this bill, such as implementing the Food Safety Modernization Act and the Dodd-Frank and Commodity Futures Trading Commission. The United States is the greatest agriculture producer in the world. We produce more, and we produce it more efficiently than any other country. But this bill will undermine the very resources that support our agricultural supremacy. I feel it is important to use this bill to strengthen our rural economy by investing our precious federal resources, investing in expanding markets for agricultural products and support international economic development, by investing in developing alternative markets for agricultural products, by providing financing needed to help expand job opportunities and improve housing, utilities, and infrastructure in rural America, which the U.S. Department of Agriculture is responsible for, and most specifically enhancing food safety, and improving the nutrition and health by providing food assistance and nutrition education and promotion. These are the things that America does best. Madam Speaker, as we move through this bill, through the process, again, I want to make sure that you understand that there are dire consequences to adopting this bill. I'd like to reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from California reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Georgia.
I yield to the distinguished chairman of the committee, the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Rogers. 4 minutes.
4 minutes. The gentleman is recognized. The gentleman from Kentucky.
I thank the chairman for yielding the time and congratulate him and Mr. Farr on producing, I think, a good bill. The bill answers the call from Americans to reduce government spending while still providing for critical programs that keep American agriculture competitive in a global economy. The $125.5 billion in both discretionary and mandatory funding in this bill will help our rural communities to thrive, provide daily nutrition to children and families, and keep our food and drug supply safe. However, we can't spend at the rate we used to. We've hit the debt ceiling. We're borrowing more than 42 cents on every dollar we spend. We're mortgaging our children's futures. We have to rein in spending, even if it may not be the most popular thing to do. Accordingly, Chairman Kingston and his subcommittee did not provide the agencies and programs funded by this bill with carte blanche. This bill trims lower priority services, eliminates duplicative and wasteful programs, and limits funding and increases oversight for agencies that have been less than transparent with taxpayer money. All in all, this bill cuts nearly $5 billion in discretionary spending from the President's request. With this legislation, we're helping to put the Department of Agriculture, the FDA, and the other agencies funded by this bill back on a sustainable budget that is accountable to the taxpayers of this country. In addition, More than taking the first steps to help balance our budgets, we're taking the necessary steps to increase transparency. Not only does this legislation encourage, it requires each and every agency to submit spending plans for every program funded by this bill. This common sense oversight will go a long way in demonstrating to the American public our commitment to fiscal responsibility. I'm confident not only that Chairman Kingston and his subcommittee have made the smart but necessary cuts in this bill to help balance our budgets, but also that this bill adequately funds important government programs, including ag research, rural health, and economic development, and safety net food and nutrition services. I want to commend the chairman, the ranking member, the subcommittee members, the staff, all for their dedicated and thoughtful work on this bill, and I urge support in its final passage. And I yield back.
The gentleman from California.
Madam Chair, I yield to the distinguished ranking member of the full committee and the outstanding player in the Rose Bowl from the University of Washington, Mr. Dix.
For how long?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. The
I
gentleman is
appreciate,
recognized.
Excuse me,
I
4
appreciate
minutes.
the gentleman from California yielding. With an allocation that cuts $2.9 billion below the current level and $5 billion below the amount requested by the Obama administration for the next fiscal year, the subcommittee has drafted an agriculture appropriation bill that drastically reduces funding for food programs that serve women, children, and the elderly, and for the Food and Drug Administration, among other drastic cuts. The economy is still staggering, Mr. Chairman. Unemployment is still far too high, and people around the country are still hurting. American families need help just to make ends meet. The bill slashes funding for WIC, the Women and Infant Care and Children Nutrition Assistance Program, and the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, leaving more people to fend for themselves during the worst recession since the Great Depression. While I am pleased that we were able to provide a slight increase for the WIC program in full committee markup with the acceptance of the DeLauro amendment, this bill still drastically underfunds this critical program. This bill reduces funding from $6.73 billion this year 11 to $6.05 billion, a cut of more than $650 million below current levels. The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities estimates that the drastic reduction will require us to turn away from 200,000 to 350,000 eligible low-income and young children next year. That's a tragedy. Unemployment is still hovering around 9%, and the economic recovery has faltered since the new Republican majority took their reins with their illogical cut-and-grow strategy. Again, this is no time to be pulling the rug out from underneath the people who can least afford it, Mr. Chairman. To cut the budget of the Food and Drug Administration represents another perfect example of Republican majority's commitment to short-sighted budgeting. In the aftermath of several nationwide recalls, Democrats in Congress passed a food safety bill that added new and important capability to the FDA. But this bill actually moves us backward in protecting our food supply and medical products. It is 12% below the current level and 21% below the amount requested by the administration. These cuts will increase the risk of reoccurring outbreaks of foodborne illness. The FDA would inspect fewer firms that manufacture food and conduct fewer inspections of imported food. The bill also takes a short-sighted approach with respect to our international food aid program, cutting Food for Peace by $457 million below current levels, and the McGovern-Dole Food for Education program by $19 million, 10% below 2011. By slashing funding for these critical overseas programs, we risk exacerbating food insecurity and strife in some of the most vulnerable parts of the world and are essentially undermining our own national security interest. Beyond food programs, there are numerous other programs that take egregious cuts. Notably amongst those is the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. The CFTC takes a cut of $30 million below current levels. Could I have 30 seconds?
Yes, 30 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
The requested increase for FY 2012 is needed in order to implement the measures put forward in the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Bill and provide oversight and regulation of the options and futures markets that wrought such havoc on our economy just a few years ago. One can't help but notice the efforts in this bill to drastically cut food assistance to the poor, which actively undermining any effort of oversight and regulation of the wealthy on Wall Street. So I urge all Democrats to vote no on this bill and yield back my time.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from Georgia.
Madam Chair, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Fortenberry.
Nebraska is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank the gentleman from Georgia for the time. Madam Chair, farmers are good Americans. They understand our tight budgetary times and the need to tighten the belt, and they are willing to do their part. But before we vote on this bill, which does some very heavy lifting in this regard, let's consider the profound benefits American agriculture brings to people across the country. It's about food security. Today, Americans pay only 10 to 12% of their income on food compared to those in other nations who pay up to 50% or more. Ag policy now is also about economic security, energy security, and even national security and global stability. Agriculture, Madam Chair, is one of the few bright spots of the American economy. Agriculture is consistently one of the few trade areas where the U.S. still holds a positive trade balance. And exports are growing as the world demands more and more American-grown food. Last year, ag exports neared $108 billion, and projections indicate an even stronger total this year. Agriculture is also helping strengthen our energy independence. From rural wind and solar farms to biofuels and biogas production from livestock waste, we are beginning to see the vast potential of renewable sources found on America's farms and ranches. Not only does food security bolster our own national security, but it also aids in global stability. Our farmers help feed the world and keep the peace in understated but very important ways. In my home state of Nebraska, for instance, our farmers are rebuilding war-torn fields in Afghanistan, countering the illicit poppy trade and helping to create new and sustainable and lawful agricultural production. I just came from a ceremony where we sent off 57 members of the agricultural unit of the Nebraska Air and Army National Guard, who will be using their farming skills to help Afghanistan with new irrigation techniques and new models for wheat and grassland production. Our farmers participating in global agricultural training projects achieve key humanitarian goals as well. We have made significant gains in empowering women producers, which gives rise to greater equality and social mobilization and engagement in their local communities. For instance, they are helping to rebuild Haiti's decimated agricultural sector in the aftermath of the terrible earthquake. And through various U.S. agricultural food aid programs, they are combating global hunger. Again, Mr. Chairman, American farmers are ready to do their part and help fix our nation's fiscal mess. But in cleaning up this mess, it's very important not to forget about the hard work our farm families put in day and day out to help feed and fuel and protect all of America. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California.
How much time do we have remaining?
Gentleman from California has 22.5 minutes remaining, and the gentleman from Georgia has 19 minutes. Gentleman from California.
I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished member from Ohio, former ranking member of this committee, Marcy Kaptur.
Gentlelady from Ohio is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, and I want to thank the ranking member from California, Mr. Farr, for his hard work, and Mr. Kingston, the chairman from Georgia, for bringing this bill before us today. I'm really sorry I can't support it, because at a time of such instability in the American economy, this committee bill simply further destabilizes one of the most productive sectors of the American economy, agriculture, and all the Americans who depend on the Department of Agriculture during the hard times that we are experiencing. This legislation has some of the most destructive sections in it that eliminate practically, for all practical purposes, the Rural Energy for America program, taking America into a new energy future. It takes the cops off the beat at the Commodity Futures Trading Corporation to hold Wall Street accountable. We all know that hasn't been happening. The drastic decrease in the nutrition and commodity supplemental food programs hurting people across this country in the WIC program, children. They can't speak for themselves here. And as well, there's a dangerous competition, which hardly exists at all, allowing our farmers and ranchers to be treated equally as the big packers and processors are at the Grain Inspection Packers Stockyards Agency. Later in the consideration of the bill, I'll be dealing with that in a different way, but let me just say a word about the Commodity Futures Trading Corporation. The level of funding provided in this bill is inadequate. We all know it's inadequate because of the mess we face in the derivatives market today. The small agency called the Commodity Futures Trading Commission represents a critical bulwark against the gouging of the American people in the type of manipulation, speculation, and outright fraud that led our country into the worst economic recession since the Great Depression. With gas prices now rising above $4 a gallon and food prices just skyrocketing, who's really the watchdog in charge of implementing reforms and regulating the market to prevent excessive speculation in all fields? I'd hate to think that this is being underfunded to prevent robust regulation of that speculation and allow these massive interests on Wall Street to continue doing, and in the Chicago's markets, futures markets, to continue doing what they've been doing, and that is gouging the pocketbook of the American people, whether it's gas prices or food prices. Just to give you an idea, this proposal would not fund the agency to implement reforms contained in the Dodd-Frank bill in a market that's grown from $13 trillion back in the mid-1990s to over $600 trillion. It basically takes the cops off the beat. It basically takes the watchdogs away. And one might say you give a green light for them to do it to us again. Madam Speaker, might I have an additional 30 seconds?
Another 30 seconds.
I thank the gentleman for doing that.
For 30 seconds.
I mentioned the nutrition programs, the serious underfunding affecting seniors and children and women across our nation, and I want to thank the chairman for accepting an amendment to restore just $1.3 million to the Rural Energy for America program as we struggle to regain our energy independence. But we are a long way from there, and rural America simply has to be a full partner in this effort. This bill does not do that. And though we disagree on this bill and the funding levels, I congratulate both the new chair and ranking members on their hard work over the last several months to prepare this bill and bring it to the floor. And I yield back my remaining time.
Georgia.
Madam Chair, I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished Vice Chair of the Republican